Okay, my friends, we had a lot of news today. It is Tuesday, March 18th. I'll tell you all about the big story in just a moment. I have 5 big stories for you, and wow, there's just a lot here. So here we go. We're going to start with this. Volodymyr Zelensky is talking about yesterday how tomorrow marks 1 week since the U.S. proposal for a ceasefire in the sky, at sea, and on the front lines has been on the table. So that leads us to where President Trump was going to have this conversation with President Putin. Now, after the meeting where his envoy went to meet with Putin, and then Putin kind of made him wait for some time. Trump said he didn't, but he apparently was waiting for quite a few hours. After that, Putin made Trump wait on this for this telephone call. And he's actually at this conference and talking about things like, hey, you know, you're supposed to be at this phone call. Yeah, whatever. So Putin's making Trump wait, which is kind of making him look bad. But this is kind of, I think, a little bit of a one-upmanship kind of thing. Now, Michael McFaul, Putin refused to agree to the 30-day ceasefire that Zelensky agreed to sign. That's true. That wasn't really part of the conversation as we understand it. We went over that conversation in great detail. I did with Greg Terry today. We were just in a live stream just talking about this for an hour and 24 minutes. Covered everything. We covered what the American said at the White House, what the Russian said in Russian, what the Ukrainian said in Ukrainian, because he's translating things along the way. And it really looks like Trump didn't get what he was hoping to get. Like he was hoping to get some more movement. One of my viewers said it about as well as you could say. Putin artfully got away from the ball being in his court by kind of dodging what was going on. And so I think that's pretty fair of what actually transpired. So what are they going to get out of it? Well, they're going to exchange 175 prisoners, and 20 something of them are very critically wounded or that sort of thing. And they're going to then they also said that they were going to, Putin agreed and said he was ordering his people right now not to hit energy infrastructure. Okay, that was while they were on the phone or just immediately after, not to do it. And then you'll see what happens next. Okay, so believe me, Ukraine is on the menu, not at the negotiating table, says military analyst Michael Clark to Sky News. Sounds like it is. There's an old saying in diplomatic circles, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And believe me, Ukraine's on the menu. So let's look at a little bit of what was said. Here's Anton Gurashenko. The Kremlin started publishing details of the call between President Trump and Putin. Putin and Trump, in their phone call, have continued to and detailed a sincere exchange of opinions on the situation around Ukraine. That's really meaningless that they talked. Putin and Trump have expressed mutual interest in the normalization of relations in light of the special responsibility for providing global security. That was at the very end of the statement. And it really is like saying we want to normalize and get past this war thing. Okay, and then Putin informed Trump that on March 19th, a prisoner exchange will take place between the Russian and Ukrainian sides, 175 per people. And Putin made it look like this was some kind of benevolent gift. It's showing that he's willing to, in good faith, do what. No, he's getting 175 of his soldiers back as well. Here's what Trump said. My phone conversation today with President Putin of Russia was a very good and productive one. We had agreed to an immediate ceasefire on all energy and infrastructure with an understanding that we will be working quickly to have a complete ceasefire and ultimately an end to this very horrible war between Russia and Ukraine. This war would never have started if I were president. Many elements of a contract for peace were discussed, including the fact that thousands of soldiers are being killed, and both President Putin and Zelensky would like to see it end. The process is now in full force and effect, and we will, hopefully, for the sake of humanity, get the job done. Okay. So he posted this at 2:49 p.m. The agreement hit about not later than 1:30, because I remember when, like, where I was at the time when I was listening to this, because I was listening to it, like what was happening as the news was coming out. Okay, so about 1 o'clock at 3 something, it was violated. It was about 3 hours before Putin violated this by attacking the energy infrastructure and a major city. I think it was Kramatorsk in the east. Okay, so that's what happened there. Timothy Snyder says, utterly predictably, Putin rejects the unconditional ceasefire offered by Ukraine, sends Trump off on errands of making the Russian invasion easier and denying Ukrainian sovereignty, while Trump claims that he's accomplished something. So nothing was really accomplished of any meaningfulness, and that's where we are. John Bolton yesterday was saying on Trump's ceasefire proposal, does Ukraine also get to veto a member of the U.S. negotiating team, just like Russia? Or does Russia get unlimited vetoes? And he's talking about General Keith Kellogg and why he was kind of sidelined to a lower or demoted to a lower role in this process. But it's a good question. It seems like Putin's holding the cards here, and it's kind of terrible to see. Mike McFall says he hopes this is not true. This was yesterday. Trump weighs in on Crimea as Russian territory in a bid to end the war, or it looked like he was hinting that Crimea may be seen as Russian or something along those lines. So I'm a little relieved in the sense that the worst didn't happen, that Trump was saying, look, we've agreed that Crimea is Russian and they're going to come to the table and that sort of thing. I'm very glad to see that didn't happen, but nothing really uber productive came out of this phone call. By the way, this phone call was huge. It was the longest phone call between presidents in U.S. history. Okay. Russian war bloggers claimed that, and that was after the 1 hour wait. It was the longest phone call in U.S. history. Before I get on to the next thing, which is about what the invasion into Russia, into Belgorod, I want to also apologize. Yesterday, something weird happened to my microphone in the last minute. So this is probably the last time that you will. I'm waiting for the microphone to come. So it's being sent to me, and this is probably the last day that you'll see this microphone, because it flipped out on me yesterday twice, and once when I was on with my cousin Frank, I had to edit that out. And so goodbye microphone, you did a good job, but okay, that won't happen again. I am so sorry that happened. Okay. Next big story. Russian war bloggers claim that the AFU has launched an offensive into the Belgorod direction. They report attacks near Russian villages and near the Sumy border. By nightfall, the AFU had moved equipment and personnel to the border near Belgorod-Kursk junction. Now, I talked about that this morning. And at the time, we didn't know that they had gone over the border. The evidence was that they had not gone over the border. But later on in the afternoon, by about noon, it was clear that they had gone over the border. It's being reported that Ukrainian troops have broken through to the Russian border, into the Belgorod region. Russia has begun an evacuation from the area. Okay, so that has happened. It's not terribly large scale. But it is there. Okay, an evacuation has been announced in the Krasnoyarski district of the Belgorod region. Local authorities have not made any official statements yet, but Z channels are fueling panic about a potential breakthrough of Ukrainian forces into the region. So that's where they are, on the Sumy-Belgorod border. Okay. So next big story, Radio Free Liberty, Radio Free Europe. It's the Europeans don't want to see it go. And here is the foreign minister of Poland talking about it.
As a teenager, my father would listen on an old radio to Radio Liberty, Voice of America, Radio Free Europe. It's how we learned the basic facts about our own countries, because communist propaganda was so...
Okay, so think about this. I'm 51. So let's say 1991 was about when this all falls apart. 89 to 91 to depending on what year where you are. Like if you're Lithuania, it's 91. And so I was 18, and so everybody about my age remembers their entire youth. Like he couldn't get the facts, and now he's very interested in that not repeating and that sort of thing. So.
So tightly controlled, and these institutions continue to do similar work for autocracies today. So this is God's work, and we would like to see what can be done to help. We will take a look at what can be done. So one avenue would be to multiply the budget of the European Endowment for Democracy. Minister Lipavsky even talked about buying the two outfits. We are at the stage of brainstorming, but clearly these are worthy institutions whose mission should continue.
This issue of Radio Free Europe was raised, and it's, also coming from the other side of the Iron Curtain. Actually, it was the radio that we got a lot of information what is actually going on. So it has been a beacon of democracy and very valuable in this regard. Now the question for us is, can we come in with our funding to fill the void that US is leaving? The answer to that question is that not automatically, because we have a lot of organizations who are coming with the same request to us. But there was really a push from the foreign ministers to discuss this and find the ways.
I raised the issue as an open question. Are we interested to have such a service which is so important for our neighborhood? And I got some positive replies. So this is an indication that now we should be looking for some possible solution. So nothing specific. Of course, it will depend on the American side.
So Czech, Polish, and Estonian, you just heard from all of them, they were affected directly by this, by Radio Free Europe during the Cold War, and shutting it down it just seems tragic. But hopefully the Europeans will pick up some equivalent. Okay, next story. The British Prime Minister is reportedly planning to station thousands of Ukrainian, of UK troops in Ukraine as part of a long-term peacekeeping commitment. So what we're looking at here is, at this point, a coalition of the willing with about 30,000 troops. That's not nothing, but it's not a lot at this point. 37 potential countries. If you look in the article, the coalition includes right now the UK, France, Turkey, Canada, Australia. That's not a lot. And so that coalition of the willing could actually grow significantly. The UK Prime Minister has not confirmed whether the peacekeeping force would be authorized to fire on Russian soldiers if attacked. These rules of engagement will likely be discussed in coming days. So it could be, you're kind of playing with fire by doing that, but at the same time, you've got to stop the Russians from doing what they're doing. So this coalition of the willing, I think it's a good idea. I don't think that the Russian idea of having unarmed civilians as peacekeepers in Ukraine is going to do very much for them, but we'll see how it all plays out. Okay. The German parliament, this is the next big story, approves changes to the German constitution that will allow Germany to expand military security spending with virtually no limits. This is pretty significant. Like, this is like a big change since World War II. Like, okay, after World War II, Allied powers like, no, you're not going to have much of an army at all. It's going to be very peace loving, right? And now they didn't have the infrastructure and the military that could do what they're being called upon to do. So they're having to rethink this. And it looks like it's about $500 billion. Germany's Bundestag has passed a massive infrastructure and defense package, paving the way for over €500 billion in new spending as Germany rearms. It's so weird to talk about Germany rearming after like growing up your entire life talking about World War II and remembering what that was like and how they're defeated and there's no longer a threat. And now, we're doing the same thing with Japan. Like, Japan, pull your fair share militarily, or pull your weight militarily. It's just so strange to watch. The legislation now heads to the Bundesrat, where it is expected to pass. And while we're at it talking about this, Kyiv Insider posted this: the amount of money EU countries give Ukraine to protect Europe and from Russia compared to how much they spend on Russian energy. It's just an interesting chart. So the dot on the left is the Ukrainian flag, and that shows you how much they're spending on Russian energy. I don't know if this is in millions or billions, or I guess it's in millions. So like Italy is spending 2.26 million. Well, maybe it's billion. I don't know. Whatever it is. And then they're spending 23.55 on Russia. So that's like the worst offender here. Well, no, the worst offender is actually Hungary, because they spend 0.05 on Ukraine, and they spend 20,000 or 20 million billion, whatever it is, on Russian energy. Some countries are on the other end of the scale very good, like Denmark, 8.05 as opposed to 0.07 on Russia. And Sweden at 5.41 on Ukraine and only 0.28 on Russia. And then there's like Finland, 2.71 as opposed to 1.71 on Russian energy. Or Germany is actually at 17.26 as opposed to 11.66 on Russian energy. So the economics are important, and we ought to consider that. Just want to give you a heads up here. This isn't one of the big stories, but Georgia is on day 110 of protests amid the unparalleled repressions of unleashed against protesters, media, and civil society. Yep, they're still marching in Georgia. And lest we forget them, they're standing up to Putin's hybrid war. Okay, last little bit from Darth Putin. You might hate your job, but you don't have to listen to Trump flirt with you for 2 hours. Okay, well, there is that. 2 hours, like it was actually not quite 2 hours. It was over an hour and a half, and it was the longest call between two presidents. Okay, if you want to know more about what happened with that, Greg Terry and I went over this exhaustively. Look at this video next. Thank you for your time, the likes, the shares, and the subscribes. Thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.